This is one of my sort of most favorite topics to talk about. I've actually built a business around the tech ecosystem in New York, and right now, it's often said that technology is really the only, sustainable driver of job growth, and we're seeing that in New York, and the interest in New York is really coming within our publication from 200 plus countries, so all eyes are on what's happening here. So you guys as students, it's a really sort of exciting time. I'd let the sort of panelists introduce themselves one by one. It'd probably be helpful if we could get an idea of who you are, what you do, where you work, how long you've been working in New York Tech, as well as what you did, immediately prior to your current role.
I guess I'll start. My name is Daniel Doubrokine, DB. You can call me DB. Can everybody hear me without a mic? So I've lived in New York since 2004. I run engineering at a company called Artsy, Artsy.net. We've been around for about 5 years. I've been there almost since the beginning, and saw it go from about 5 to now over 105 employees. We're a post-Series C startup. We're close to not being a startup anymore. And we raised about $50 million, and our mission is to bring the world's art online. We're a very international company, but based in New York. I've done all kinds of things before. I've had 2 companies. I've exited one successfully in '97 and tanked another one right after that. Worked for Microsoft and a bunch of other small and big businesses.
Hi, my name is Emily White. I run a crowdfunding platform for athletes and sports teams called Dreamfuel. The company is about a year old. I've been in New York for a decade, successfully running a management company for musicians, comedians, and athletes. So kind of in the music industry, I'm well known for trying new things in music and tech, and certainly doing plenty of crowdfunding campaigns. I managed Amanda Palmer of the Dresden Dolls, who raised the most money ever for a musician on Kickstarter. So we've been doing crowdfunding in arts and entertainment for years, but now we're applying it to sports. And I'm based in Williamsburg.
I'm going to try without the mic. Hi, my name is Deepti. I'm a founder of a company called FoodtoEat. FoodtoEat, in its most current form, because we had a pivot, is an online ordering platform for corporate catering. So what that means is we work with companies from Tumblr to ad agencies like Doubrokine, and we help bring in the best local food trucks, restaurants, and caterers into their offices to help build corporate culture. We think that companies should be investing in their employees, and food is the best way to bring people together. I'm a native New Yorker, so I was born and brought up in Flushing, Queens, and I was, before I started FoodtoEat, I was working in politics, so I've worked in 4 different political campaigns, and I worked at a political consulting firm before that. And then I started FoodtoEat.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben. I'm a product manager at Kickstarter, where I'm responsible for the consumer-facing side of the product. Kickstarter, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a crowdfunding platform. Our mission is to help bring creative work to life. So similar to what you said, we're very much about supporting the creative community and allowing artists and other creators to be able to bring their work into the world. I've been at Kickstarter for about 6 months. Before that, I was at Google for a year and a half. Although I spent a number of other previous stints at Google, interspersed with various schooling, and a little bit of time at Facebook as well as a data scientist.
And my name is Alex, and I started a company called Kinvolved. I also head all of our product development and management. Kinvolved is an education technology company. We build mobile apps to help K-12 schools track student attendance. There's a lot of kids in New York City that might not really like me, since we send text messages to their parents when their kids are not there. So I fear the day that someone recognizes me on the subway that's under the age of 16. But it's more about building community and helping schools text message parents very efficiently, and it's 2-way communication, so a school can use our app, send messages about attendance or behavior or grades very easily. It saves teachers time rather than making phone calls and writing letters home. We're spinning off the K-12 product, and we're building apps for higher education, specifically also community college students, to help build community in the higher
So let's just sort of dive into the ecosystem. Recent report, I think by HRA, said there was 291,000 people working in New York City tech. I authored a report last week that had showed that last quarter we raised $1.5 billion from New York companies. Artsy IPO'd last week for 3.3. So what's happening in New York is very, very real. I'd like to get sort of the panelists' thoughts on, the ecosystem, how it's sort of changed, how you kind of characterize it. If somebody's been lucky enough to work in other ecosystems, how does it compare to you?
I mean, I consider the ecosystem in New York to be incredibly supportive. There are a lot of great events like this. There's different networking things. And I know it seems crazy because it is such a large city, but it's actually quite a small community. And especially as the weather is getting nicer, I feel like I'm even running into people. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to take advantage of here. And I've just found working in New York to be incredibly supportive.
Well, talking about the weather, I moved here from Seattle. But I think that when I moved here in 2004, it was hard to find a real software company. And now you can go and NYC and find 1,800 of them. So I think things have changed quite dramatically in a very visible way.
And personally, so when I first started the company, or at least started thinking about the idea, I graduated college in 2008, and obviously don't come from a technical background. And so when I first started thinking about the idea, I didn't actually launch our company until 2011. I moved to India to actually outsource the company because at the time there wasn't as much of a community, and it has become such a supportive community than it was back in 2008, 2009 when I was first starting. And it's amazing to see that transition of what New York has become. There are companies that are IPOing. There are companies that are raising a ton of money, not just from the East Coast, from the West Coast as well. And it's nice to see that transition happening and to have been a part of that, and to have actually lived in another country while starting the starting out as well, and seeing what they've also done. And I was living in Delhi, and now you see Indian companies actually taking, on companies here. There's companies that are taking on Amazon, so that culture is just becoming so international that Silicon Valley is no longer the place to be. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley. Silicon Alley is very much real. It's exciting to see and be a part of that in the beginning of it too.
Yeah, I spent, during my stints at Google and Facebook, I spent a lot of time out in Silicon Valley, and since decided to resettle here. And it's interesting, I agree, I've had the same impression. I mean, I was looking, so I finished graduate school, about 2.5 or 3 years ago now, and I moved to New York and didn't have any job or any idea of what I would be doing. I wanted to find something startup oriented to do. And it was interesting, even 2-3 years ago, there was so much less than there is now. So I ended up going back to Google, which was clearly a terrible option for me. But yeah, I mean, even just in the year and a half that I was at Google, things have changed so much in New York, and there's so many more opportunities. And it's interesting the contrast that you get between here and Silicon Valley. I mean, the few things that really stick out to me out there, it's sort of very homogenous. It's a lot of people, almost everyone does tech stuff, which can be great. You do get a lot of great conversations with other people who are in the same field that you are. On the other hand, it can also be somewhat of an echo chamber where you sort of really only ever hear the same problems repeated back to you. You only meet users who are like yourself. The great thing about New York City is there are so many other industries here, so many types of people, that you really get a diversity of perspective that you don't get in many other places of the world. And allows us as technologists to create products that are actually useful to people who aren't 18 to 29-year-olds, upper middle class white people who have degrees in computer science. So it's a really refreshing change of pace out here, I find.
I think that's sort of a perfect segue into the sort of next question. As we're in New York, we're at the epicenter of so many different industries: fashion, finance, publishing, whatever. A lot different than sort of Silicon Valley, as I mentioned, where they're just kind of catering to tech. So we have a number of students that are in the room that are kind of considering what their first job or their first job after graduation from master's is going to be. Should they jump into the startup world, or should they build some sort of expertise? And what are the sort of trade-offs and differences between the two?
I think it's up to you guys, I'm big on interning. and that's a great way to kind of figure out, to get some basic skills, but I also encourage students to intern maybe at a big company, maybe at a small startup, and figure out what you're really drawn to and what you're into, or maybe what turns you off. So that's a great thing about being a student, is it's a really great time to try out some of these things and see what really appeals to you. And maybe, if you are working at the right company, and as you are networking and building connections, if you do have an idea, you'll have mentors and you'll have people to work with. I mean, obviously you want to be smart about it, but I do think it's important to get some professional experience before you dive in. But you guys know what you want, and that's why we're here, to answer questions, and you guys have your internships and things like that to start to put a foot out there and really gauge, what the options are.
I think it doesn't really matter whether you start in a big or a small company, as long as you are starting an organization that is going to support your growth. I personally have alternated between small and big, and I found that the right kinds of people around you are going to make all the difference. So go after both opportunities and figure out what works for you. I do want to say that while you are young and have very little attachments, it is easier to work for something extremely risky. So if you have the appetite for something like that, go after the most crazy opportunity that is in front of you.
Yeah, and I think what's great about startups is, so I've actually never worked at a large corporation. I came from the political world where, again, I was working in campaigns where it was kind of intense and almost like a startup, and I took those skill sets and applied them to starting a company, because I always worked underneath a deputy campaign manager. And I think the beauty of being able to work for a startup or running your own company is actually like learning so much more, right? You're all hands-on. There's no training process. The training process is pretty much the experiences you're going to have. You're going to have to figure out, how do I hire people? Where do I hire people from? What do I have to do to put together HR departments and all of this? So I think the experience that you would get at a startup, you would never get anywhere else, because at corporations, everything is very structured. You're told to do one thing and one thing only, whereas at a startup, anyone I hire, I give them full opportunity, full ability to be able to kind of explore different methodologies and different ways to come up with, whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. We actually pivoted as a company, and through that pivot, we had some interesting hires. That gave the people that I hired, and even, engineers, like they get to explore with different kinds of technologies as to, if I need to create this product, what do I need to do? So I think in that sense, I think interning during your college years is absolutely a must. Finding the apps that you use or the companies that you order from Amazon, go crazy, go big, and, take that opportunity and say, like, LinkedIn people, like almost saying to them, like, hey, really interested in the work that you're doing at Amazon or at Uber or whatever company it is, and asking them for the opportunity to even have a chat on the phone or email them some questions. So, I mean, if I had to pick, I would always go the startup route just because I'm biased, but and have never really loved working. I've interned at corporates, so I think the opportunities that you will get, the experience you will get, is best at a startup.
I might add, so I, for some context, like when I originally joined Google, it was about 13,000 people, which may sound big, but by the time I left, it was like 60,000 people. Facebook was 1,000 people to 2,000 people while I was there, and then I recently moved over to Kickstarter, which is about 100 people. So very big difference. I've seen almost every order of magnitude the size of a company, and I would agree. The two things that seem most important for me for my personal growth and development, you have to have one or the other, or perhaps both if you're really lucky. But one is someone who you can really learn from, and a team that can really teach you and mentor you. You can often get that in big companies, although not always. I've had experience both ways, where at big companies I've had that, and at big companies I haven't. Or the other is enough autonomy to learn things on your own and mess up and make mistakes and learn from your own experience. If you have one or the other, you end up learning a lot. If you have a mentor who can really teach you, learn a lot from that person. If you can, have a lot of autonomy and learn as you go, you can learn a lot there. But you get into trouble when you don't have either, which is sort of how I ended up leaving my last job. Because I didn't, after a while at Google, just in the role I ended up in, I didn't feel like I had either, and so I moved on to something where I kind of have both. I'm feeling very lucky at the moment.
Well, I just want to add at the same time, because something I really stressed about as an undergrad that I have a feeling some people here are, is like, am I making the right decision? Should should I intern this place or that place or whatever? It's all your name and your reputation. So as long as you do a good job and as long as you're accountable and doing the things that you say you will and are asked of you, it almost doesn't matter. So don't stress too much about that at the same time. It's all going to lead to what's next.
It always helps you for the next step, right?
Definitely.
I mean, no matter what decision you make, that experience will help you for the next.
Yeah.
So why New York for your businesses? As founders, you probably had the chance to launch the business anywhere in the world. Why did you choose New York, and sort of what impact has that had on your business? Has it affected the trajectory at all? And why not somewhere else?
Well, Artsy is an art business. About 50% of the art transactions in the United States happen in New York City, and there's 1,800 galleries in Chelsea, or some crazy number like that. So this is kind of the natural place for it to be. If anywhere else, we would be in Hong Kong or Sao Paulo, where we are already too. So, but personally, for me personally, I was in New York for the first time in 1988, and I stepped out, looked up, and said, "This is a city where I will live one day," and that's what really brought me here in 2004. And Artsy is a perfect company to be here. We employ engineers and humans alike.
There's no other place in the world I would choose to be an entrepreneur. I just feel like I have access to everything, to everybody. I mean, I absolutely love New York. I'm totally obsessed with it. And at the same time, there are direct flights to pretty much everywhere, so I can also get where I need to go. So everything here is very, very world class, no matter what facet of my business I'm dealing with, and at the same time, I can get to places very easily.
I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I have no other, I mean, there's no other reason other than being a New Yorker. I love the city, everything about it. It's extremely diverse. You know, we were talking about the number of languages within the CUNY system, and just, I mean, I grew up in Queens, just the number of languages there, I think it's just an amazing place to be. And, you know, like you said, that there's a lot of opportunities here as well. There's a lot of resources. It's a world-class place. Why would you want to be anywhere else? I mean, this is just, again, I'm from New York. So
I'm not.
I didn't have to say, but I'm just going to keep going. But besides that, I mean, when I first started the company, FoodtoEat was an online ordering platform for food trucks. And so for me, it was natural. You know, I was an immigrant kid, grew up in New York, was waiting online at a food truck, and I thought, why am I waiting? I'm an impatient New Yorker. Why can't I create a better solution for this? And provide access to these food cart and truck owners. And I thought New York would be a great place to start because it's been a part of the ecosystem for the past 100 years. And then I, you know, took the company and, you know, obviously I decided to pivot, but why can't I provide access to these food truck and cart owners to companies? Why are people only going to Smorgasbord on the weekends, you know? So for me, it was just the epicenter of great food. And I was always a part of that, and I wanted to provide access to all the people that aren't from New York and give them the opportunity to have access to it. You know, so New York has always been home for me, but besides that, I mean, it was a great way to start a food company.
And Kickstarter has a similar story. Like I said, we're very much about the creative community and the creation of culture, new ideas, and bringing those to life. And so it's interesting. I couldn't actually imagine Kickstarter being based anywhere else. It would, to me, we're based in Greenpoint. It's like the most hipster company you've ever imagined. Like, I don't fit in at all. I mean, I had to grow the beard. I wear glasses at work. But you know, it's like I couldn't imagine Kickstarter being anywhere else. You know, it's really important for us to be at the hub of culture and creation in the world, and that's New York.
I did not love New York. I was here in 2008 and I was like, I gotta go. I thought I was going to stay here for a year, and now flash forward to 2015 and here we are, and here I am. And it's grown on me quite a bit. And I work in education, and why not work in the biggest school district in the entire world with 1.1 million students and the most bureaucracy and the most challenges. So I see it, you know, if you can make an impact, you know, we're a very socially driven company. If I can make an impact in New York City, and if I can get kids back in school here, it's sort of a piece of cake in smaller districts across the country, and I found that. So I would take these challenges, and I've seen the positive side of things, and I'm still here, and I'm growing growing a company here, and I tried to phase the idea a few weeks ago of maybe moving out to San Francisco to see if people would take the bait, but I think we'll still be here. So here I am.
You can make it here, you can make it.
I think that's true, and it's hard, but like you said, like it's a very supportive tech ecosystem, I think, because it is so challenging.
Well, it is hard, and that's a good thing. That's something that I really love about New York. I was interviewing an intern the other day. I think she goes to Indiana University, and she was thinking about coming here for the summer. And like the fact that you want to come here is already a good thing. And I think any human that's kind of interested in living in New York, like that's a good life skill. And I said, look, like I saw a girl crying on the subway the other day. I've been there, but like those challenges, it's cliche, but it really does make you stronger. So I think New York's like that toughness is something that's really special about New York as well.
The bar is definitely higher here, and if you can make it, you've achieved. But if you're going to take a challenge and achieve something great. I mean, every singer tries to sing on Broadway or at the Metropolitan Opera, and not at a small little theater somewhere. People are really striving to be the best of themselves.
And what the good thing is, just as supportive as New York is, we're also very real, right? So if you ask people, hey, I have a photo sharing app idea. No. Do not do it. Do not do it.
It's been done.
It's been done way too many times. So I think the great thing, something that I like to talk about, just advice to people when starting a company or when you have an idea. I do always say, go for it, dream big, and if your dreams don't scare you, then you're not dreaming big enough and all of that awesome stuff. But one of the things that I've done as an entrepreneur has been surrounding myself with naysayers, with people that are not going to tell me you are amazing. I want people to tell me you suck, and this is how we can make you better. Because that's the only way you will build yourself up. That's the only way your idea will go from here to here, right? If you always have people just telling you it's amazing, it's amazing, it's amazing, positive reassurance is great, but only to a certain point. So I think in New York, as supportive as we are to each other, we'll also say like, hey, I saw this thing that you sent out the other day. Why don't you try tweaking it? And we won't say it in the meanest way. We'll say it with a little edge. But I think that's like one of the great things is that supportive community is always there to challenge you in a positive way.
If you interview with us, we'll reject you harshly.
I'm not trying to introduce. I'll be
Well, sort of moving on, within New York, there's so many different opportunities to really jump into the entrepreneurial landscape and the tech ecosystem. On any given night, there's probably 30 to 40 different events. The city has put together a number of programs like tonight. I'm personally a venture fellow through NYC, which is an EDC1 program. I'm getting sort of first-class mentorship from top industry leaders. So there's all these programs that are available, but for someone sitting on the other side of the table when they're first jumping in, it could be a little bit daunting. What do I do? Where do I start? What are the sort of resources or steps that you took at the beginning? What are you using currently to kind of keep active in the ecosystem and keep abreast of what's happening?
In my 20s, I said yes to everything. And I can't encourage that enough. A lot of times I'll see interns turning down events or networking things or things like that. There's so much to take advantage of here in a good way. So you need to take care of yourself, of course, but you also just kind of need to be going nuts in a good way and just immersing yourself in the scene and meeting as many people as possible and following people on Twitter. And my attorney is a great networker, and she'll say, I tried to leave this networking event with 5 business cards, and if you know that you're kind of shy or not a natural networker, that's kind of a good thing, because you need to work on that and put yourself out there. So you can start a company from anywhere, you can be successful from anywhere, but how great is it that you can go out and meet other entrepreneurs, you can meet people at these companies, you can go to different networking events. So I just love how much opportunity there is here.
I think if you're an engineer, you should really become a doer first and bring the things you make to the table. It's great to attend all the events and network great, but if you don't have the substance, it's not going to get you really far. There's plenty of opportunities to contribute to open source projects. You get a lot of mentorships and so on and so forth, and you'll find a very supportive and helpful community here, but you have to bring that to the table. And I personally have helped and I'm willing to help anybody in this room, but you got to start with something.
That's such a and I feel like sometimes people in tech can kind of fall into two categories. There is the engineering side, of course, and there's the consumer-facing side, and people can get too obsessed with either one, you know? So there are times when I just want to, like, I'm on my laptop all the time, you know, I'm not going out at all, and it's like, oh, I need to get out and do something, and then there's other people that just network like crazy and are at every conference and mixer, but they don't do any actual work. So depending on what side you're on, you know, I think it's important to realize that and mix it up and find a balance.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned how to find engineers, and now I have these engineers that can vet for me. But one of the things that, like, on the engineering side was, I like to see engineers actually having their own projects on the side and, like, working with others to build something, whether it was a company or not. It doesn't really actually matter, but it was just some interesting projects that they were working on, because at least it gave a level of interest. And something that I liked when we were looking for engineers was, did they understand the business? Were they coming here because they actually cared about where the business was going to go, and they were going to help us actually come up with solutions, as opposed to just coding it the way we said it, right? I've had plenty of bad experience because I had outsourced originally, which was not a great idea for me. A lot of people do it, but just for me, it wasn't the best step to take when first starting your company. So for us, it's always, you know, show us that you have a life besides what you are supposed to be doing, or what you think you're supposed to be doing. And that comes as part of being a doer, right? Come in with something that you've done and being able to showcase that. I think that's really important in general.
As for me, when I moved back here about 3 years ago, I went through, I think it was like a website, it might have been a city website. It was called like madeinnewyork.com or something like that. And they have like just a giant list of New York City startups. And I went through every single one and picked out the ones that sounded interesting and just like found people's contact information and emailed people
That's how
completely
easy
cold.
it is, yeah.
And it actually led to like some people are still like good friends of mine, which randomly from that. And also, you know, I ended up with some job interviews. I mean, just like people are surprisingly willing, especially like, you know, piece of just like general advice, like your first communication to someone, don't be like, please give me a job, right? Like, maybe like, I'd like to take you out for coffee and like hear more about how you ended up.
Even with that though, I get so much of that, and there's so much information like on our website about me. It's like, if I've already given that interview, check that out before you
that's
say
an
that.
excellent point. I actually had a really jarring 10-minute meeting with Sheryl Sandberg once, and I made that mistake where she was like, have you read my interview? And I was like, oh God, am I like already?
You got the job, right?
Yeah, well, I was at Facebook already at the time.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay.
Anyway, where was I going with that? Yeah, I mean, just, so yeah, maybe like be more than just like ask for a cup of coffee. I mean, like, have your questions ready for these people, which to be fair, I did have for Cheryl, but she didn't give me enough time to ask them. But I remember, like, you know, when I was like looking for an internship at Google the first time around, I went to a talk that someone gave who had gone to where I went undergrad, and you know, she was at Google now. I had like very directed questions about like, oh, why have you guys gone with that solution instead of that solution? And like, what sort of research did you do to validate, you know, that, you know, approach that you took with Google search? And you know, we had a great back and forth, and she offered me an internship at Google. And you know, I've like, same with Facebook, like I reached out to someone completely, a friend of mine found a researcher at Facebook who was doing research similar to what I was doing. And I emailed him and I was like, hey, we do similar research, like, you know, maybe we could collaborate. Here's what I'm doing, like I'd be interested in hearing more about what you do. And he was like, you should come intern with us at Facebook. And so yeah, I think definitely, like, you're absolutely right, like try to be more directed and like, you know, have like concrete, like do your homework, have concrete questions, and like an angle that, you know, like is more than just like, you know, please give me a job, where like I want to spend your time.
I mean, one of the things actually I think I heard Sheryl Sandberg talk about was when she's interviewing people is, and I've kind of used this tactic of, what can you do for me? So like when you are in that interviewing process, like doing that research of the company, what they've been doing, and exactly what you just said, and she talks about this all the time, is like, I'm a CEO, I run operations, like what do you think that we're not doing, that, you know, what value are you bringing to the company? What value are you bringing, even as an intern? Like I was talking to an MBA student that we're potentially bringing on, and I said, you're only going to be here for 3 months, and we're such a small team, we're only 7 people, but we don't have time to waste on just managing you and seeing what you're going to do. So what value can you bring to us? Because we're a startup, right? It's a very different community. And in a team our size, I'm sure we all have it a little different with 100 people, there isn't as much much of a training process. So what is it that you're going to come in? What do you love about our company so much that fascinated you to even reach out to us to want to apply? And what do you want to help us do? We obviously always have our goals and ideas, but I think Alexandra put it right. It's just like, well, what are you going to do for me at the end of the day too?
I can't stress how important what you just said is. I mean, 1,000%.
And sort of the last tip there, if you're looking for a job, make sure you follow the funding reports. Any company that's raising a Series B and has announced it, within 1 or 2 months, it's going to have a significant number of job postings. So just make sure you keep an eye out on that, sign up for alerts, and see what's going on. We cover it, Digital NYC covers it. It's on Crunchbase, so just really keep a shrewd eye on what's happening in the ecosystem, because there's going to be a lot of opportunity, especially now when a lot of the rounds in New York are coming later and later. With the sort of funding comes the hiring. So you've hired now 105 people, Daniel?
Yeah,
in the
Artsy.
company?
Artsy is about just over 100 people,
And how many engineers?
20 engineers.
So we have a number of CS and engineering students in the audience. So what is it that you look for when hiring engineering students, and kind of, what does your team do on a daily basis, so they can get maybe a glimpse of, kind of the projects that they should be working on?
Sure. So we're very particular. We have been involved in a lot of open source world for a long time. Some of the people that work on the engineering team are well known in the open source community. We have, for example, Orda Drax, who is one of the Cocopods people. We have Eloy Durant, who is in the top 100 Ruby on Rails contributors, etc. So we've done a lot of, and most of our software is open source, but not everything. So we have a very thick pipeline of candidates. So we look for something very particular because we have the luxury to do that. So the kind of people we look for is a term coined by the founder of IDEO, T-shaped people with a wide set of interests and narrow specialties. So typically we'll find engineers who come from the art background and who have become programmers by their own decisions, so sometimes late in their careers, so who are career changers, and not your pure computer science background candidates. So that's our best candidates, and those who do well, who like us for what we're trying to accomplish, and who also have the right background, kind of left-right brain at the same time. In terms of what you work on, it's pretty standard software engineering. I was thinking about what's a fun project that we did recently. We got a few tens of thousands of images from the National Gallery in DC, and turns out they were all framed. So we had to crop the frames out, but we're not going to do it by hand, and that's like a typical computer science thing to do. We have a blog post online. I can share the links. We did a little bit of machine learning and cropped those images, and it had a very high success rate at finding the frames. It's actually not a trivial problem. There's plenty of paintings that have squares within squares and all kinds of other wonderful things. So it's not obvious at all. That's quite fun. Other than that, at this point, most of our challenges are around scale, infrastructure, user experience, kind of traditional software things in what you can imagine an art company would have.
Interesting. And I'd like to hear from maybe one of the earlier stage founders as how their sort of engineering needs sort of differ, or compare and contrast them.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of hiring, I haven't hired 100 people yet. I manage 4 engineers right now, and a designer, so 5 versus 100. But I agree, when I vetted engineers, I've been most attracted to those that were in the classroom or understand the issues that we're trying to tackle. So at the end of the day, there are so many coders in New York City, so many engineers, it's actually a bit alarming. So how do you separate yourself? And also how do you convey to me why you'd want to work at an education technology company when you can really work anywhere? Yeah, it's really interesting. And now with the rise of programs like GA and Flatiron, it's been really interesting in how that's changed the hiring dynamic, at least for me personally.
3 out of 4 applications are junior engineers, often from App Academy, GA, Flatiron, and so on. And maybe we get a few a day, but I just want to contrast this with when we look for an art historian, we get 600 a week. So the numbers are exponentially higher for everything else than an engineer. So you're still in a good place, even though there are a lot of engineers coming to the market. It's nowhere close to numbers of every other discipline that's out there. And it takes some patience, and you need to differentiate yourself from others. But you're in a pretty good place to find a job.
I would also, for a quick point, I've interviewed a lot of women in the space, men in the space, but speak with confidence. It's very basic, but I've just met a lot of engineers that, to me, it's just very interesting. Just be confident in yourself. And for internships, don't work for free. I've had so many people, just wanting to work for free, but you're providing a talent to a tech company, or if you have a salary, like go on AngelList. There's a really great tool to help you capture the level of engineer you're at, and salary versus equity. Know your worth as well. I've had a lot of it, specifically, women engineers say, I'll work for 50,000. I'm like, you're worth 80,000 plus a percent equity in my company. So just be a little wise around that point too.
For the anecdote, I had a girl who we hired. We always ask engineers what their salary expectations are. And 2 juniors at the same time that were hired, and I asked what the salary expectations were. One was a girl, and the other one was a guy. Woman. The guy gave about $20,000 more in his expectations. However, we have a system in which we grade every new hire. It doesn't matter who they are, and we gave a higher offer to the woman and we gave a lower offer to the man. And that's just I feel like that's what tech companies are supposed to do, but some will take advantage, and that's not okay. So yeah, absolutely know your worth. That's very much it's very important.
I mean, we of course look for hard work, passion, but to that point, communication skills between engineer and the consumer-facing team is really, really important. And I know this is a constantly evolving thing, but time estimations, because that affects so many other things. I'm serious with funding and with networking, and I know it doesn't exist, but we all have to plan that as business people. So it's like, even if you can kind of get in range, that's what's gonna continue to help fund your salary. But yeah, communication skills are really, really important.
I actually was at an event the other day, and somebody told me, so we have a sales team and we have an engineering team, and this particular founder has started, I'm almost wanting to try this, just to get them to actually give us a time, is incentivizing them as you would for your sales team. So the sales team is, if you hit your quota, 20 whatever vendors that you need to sign on, well, if you give me an estimate and you hit that estimate and you're like within a week of that estimate, we'll give you a $5,000 bonus.
That's awesome.
And it's actually pretty interesting because engineers aren't ever trained that way, right? It's almost just do good work and you're gonna get a salary. And I don't know how it's like at big companies, but it's really rare that you're getting bonuses. So it's actually an interesting strategy, and it's frustrating when you don't come from that tech background. But just like one thing about hiring for us, I've said this before, just show us that you're not just an engineer, right? Just, whether it is an engineering project that you're doing, for anything, even if you're coming as a salesperson, show us your different passions. Don't be afraid to say that, you like to paint or you do pottery or whatever random thing it is, that you like to play FIFA. I think I've had so many conversations with people because they never expected me to actually be a soccer fan, but I'm obsessed with it. And when people put it on, I'm like, oh, what team do you like? And then we go into this other conversation because at the end of the day, we want to work with people we like. I hire people that I can have a conversation with, and it's not just about the company. It's not just about what the work is and what quota they need to fill. At the end of the day, I spend 90% of my time with my team, and if I can't talk to you about anything but that, it just sometimes can get a little.
If I can give another side to the working with people you like, I love working with people. I like, however, I work with people that share my values and my objectives. I think that's just just to distinguish a little bit from the, I don't want to, my coworkers are also my friends, but they are my coworkers first.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, like, your goals have to be aligned at the same time, that we're all here for a driven mission. But again, at the end of the day, like, diversity is also really good to have in a resume. It doesn't have to be the traditional resume of, these are the only things that I do, and it's just what applies to the job that I'm applying for. It's, you know, the little caption of who you are as a person, that I think needs to be.
And even if you're really hardcore about work, which everyone here is, we look for those type of things because taking a break to watch soccer or whatever, that makes you a better worker for all of us, you know? But again, just with the communication thing between the engineering side and the consumer-facing side, we can't live without each other, you know what I mean? So I think that balance, understanding that balance is really, really important. Obviously, we need engineers, and engineers need to understand that the tools that they're building and the things that we're creating affect real things and real people and money and outcomes and all of that. So, like I said, we can't live without each other.
Certainly. We're going to open up the questions in a couple of minutes, but before we do you have one sort of final piece of advice for people that are looking to enter the entrepreneurial ecosystem, or work in tech or work at startups? We've covered that all, but just one sort of final piece. I think something important that I thought about is you guys should really be focused on sort of the culture of where you're going to be working, because it has to be a cultural fit. You're going to be spending a lot of time with these people, so you want to make sure you sort of fit, and their values and ideals are up to your expectations.
My advice remains the same: make something first.
Yeah. I mean, just dig in, work really hard. Don't worry if you're making the right or wrong decisions. If you're positive and you have a great work ethic, like, you can't really go wrong.
I don't think that there's one piece of advice. I mean, culture fit, I think that's really important. It's something that FoodtoEat is working on with a lot of companies. So I think finding a place that you'll actually, where you actually, I think finding a company that where you believe that the mission is in line with what you believe as well. So if you're working for a company that you don't believe that their bigger goal is interesting, you shouldn't be there. Because at the end of the day, they want everyone to be driving towards that same mission. So I think looking into culture and mission is probably the number one thing.
And piggybacking off that point, don't take just any job. That to me was the biggest thing. I started looking for work, and really limited the scope of companies that I was willing to talk to and interview with, because there are lots and lots and lots of tech companies. Fortunately, now in New York, some are many are wonderful. A smaller set are wonderful for you, given who you all are individually. And really, it's going to be something that you spend a lot of your time and your energy and your soul pouring into this job. At least that's you hopefully, right? Like, you want to have a job where you really want to put your heart and soul into it. And so, I had friends in college who just took the first job they got because it was a job and it was offered to them. And a lot of them were really unhappy. And, I've seen a lot of them switch jobs, 2, 3, 4 years out to things that are much better fits and make them much, much, much happier. And it largely was because they didn't take the time to really do the due diligence and really look out and see what was out there. And they just took the first thing that came to them. And really, it's not worth it so much. The return investment, looking at the broader spectrum of what might be out there for you, really makes sense.
I guess real quick, we've all touched on this, but speaking, classes are important, and I'm all about attendance and showing up every day. But, outside of that, understanding theory behind JavaScript is very important, but practical application, in my opinion, having a tech startup is so much more important. So contribute to open source like DB said. If you don't know how, ask the person next to you or ask one of us. Find a mentor. I would say that's one of the most number one things. When I started my startup in 2011, I honest to God had never even heard of the word entrepreneurship or lean startup or all the things that are pretty trendy these days. I just saw a problem and I built a solution. I entered a hackathon and now I have a company, So find someone where you can ask questions, and I actually just met for coffee with DB the other few weeks ago. So definitely you build these things. But definitely, just be creative with your talent and don't constrict yourself to the classroom. So I keep forgetting that we're in the classroom setting essentially. So the tech community is a lot bigger than the four walls where you'll be in class for the next few years.
Awesome. At this point, I guess we'll open up to Q&A. Just one thing in mind, this is not Jeopardy, so please don't make a statement in the form of a question. Please ask, be concise, and be mindful. Gentleman over there.
So you all touched on being involved in the tech community. What are some programs or events or communities that you are involved with personally you recommend to beginners like us?
So NYC, first of all, obviously. I think we talked about General Assembly and Uncubed. I'm just restating stuff that was mentioned in the beginning, but all three have partnered with them, and Uncubed is definitely an amazing event where they feature I think 40 to 50 of the top startups in New York. There's also Startup Job Fair. Talking about networking, one of the things that I think is really what I did when I was starting out was I went on Twitter in 2009 and started tweeting about things that were of interest to me, started following people that were of interest to me, and I used it as my #1 networking tool. I started reaching out to people that I didn't even think I would be able to reach out to, and I had lunch at the CTO of Cisco's house 3 months ago because of cold email through all this tweeting and following that I've been doing. So I think using social media to your advantage would be really great.
To that point, Twitter is such a passive way to network at the same time. It's not as in your face as people emailing me and asking me for lunch or whatever, but I would look at what you're interested in. Obviously it depends on if the company's consumer facing or not, but if you want to work at Spotify or even a Kickstarter or things like that, go on their Twitter, look at events they're hosting and parties they're throwing and things like that, and just get out there and start networking. And when you do meet people, like I said, following up on Twitter is a great way because it's not just another email in my inbox.
If you write code, there are meetups for every single language. For Ruby, for example, there's NYCRB that's really big, and for JavaScript, there's others. There are conferences put together by engineers like Empire.js or Goruko. All these are really great resources, and I encourage you to go to those and then to present, even if what you present is some really small thing. They're always open to new presenters, always looking for things like that.
New York provides opportunity for so many different events, and really getting in front of high caliber people is not difficult. But so your aim should just really be to use your time effectively and get in the room with the smartest people you can find. And sort of from an insider's perspective of navigating the event scene, one of the sort of tips is just look at the venue. Most of the time, if it's held at a Microsoft or at a Google, they've done the vetting, it's going to be a quality event. Stay away from the stuff at bars, unless you really want to just go out and go to happy hour. There's a time and a place for that, but if you really want to go network, just, I would do some sort of solid research on where it's being held, who's throwing it, and who's going to be in the room.
And I am a huge introvert, so the whole networking thing when I started Kinvolved was my absolute worst nightmare. I've learned to cope with it and deal with it, and when I had to pitch our product at New York Tech Meetup a few months ago to 800 people, I thought I was going to pass out. So, it's not that bad for any introverts in the room.
Ask people where they're from. That's always a great networking thing. If you can get them started talking about their kids, they'll keep talking. So believe it or not, we kind of like to talk about soccer or things outside of the industry, and sometimes you can find that connection. But where you're from, you never know. Maybe you're from the same part of the country or have some sort of connection.
And you can, for Eventbrite, most of the time there's a list of people that are going. Find the 5 people. I've done this where I've tweeted out before, hey, I'm going to be at that event. It would be great if we could chat for a few minutes or grab a cup of coffee before or after or something. So simple things that may seem very trivial, but.
And don't be too hard on yourself if you are trying to seek someone out. You can meet great people in the bathroom line, the bar line, whatever. It's all networking. It's all good stuff.
And last thing, guessing emails is okay. I've definitely done that, and I've heard plenty of people saying this that are very successful and did this back in the late 90s, early 2000s when email wasn't even a thing. And they were guessing emails. So if you want to guess an email, it's okay. If they don't respond, that's okay. Keep trying. They're bound to eventually notice you, right? So
Keep your emails short and to the point.
yeah, exactly. One-liners are the best.
Okay, so it's been echoed here not too long ago that when you're in an interview, you should be confident in what you're trying to pass. But it's also important to kind of acknowledge your shortcomings, right? When you apply for a job, you kind of want to be honest about what you can and what you cannot do. So maybe from your experience, what's a better way to do it without coming out without like short in confidence or not really transparent, or what's the golden way?
What do you
do it?
study or what do you do?
What I do?
Yeah.
I do computer science.
Okay, I would focus on that. Like I guess when I think about my own weaknesses, I find other people to complement it. But if I'm in an interview and you want to hear about, Dreamfuel or the music industry or yoga or swimming, and those are very specific things I know about, I'm going to tell you all about that. But I have Brian Carter from our team here. He's much more technical than I am. That's why I wanted to work with him. So I guess I see what you're saying, but you're CS. Focus on that. Show us all the awesome things you can do.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, but let's say I have a technical interview. Yeah, let's say I have a technical interview and they want to know what I know. Like,
Yeah.
and like, how good am I at C++ or Java or JavaScript, or how well do I understand data structure,
Of
or like
course.
where am I short? Like where am I?
Nobody is
not?
really good at C++.
Just be honest, because obviously, that's gonna shine through.
You
Don't
can,
lie.
yeah, you can be confident in acknowledging your own shortcomings. So, I've been in lots of interviews over the years where I haven't known the answer to a question, or where it hasn't been in my skill set, the thing that we're discussing. And you can just acknowledge that. And you say like, this is not one of my strong suits. These are my strong suits. You can tell them what they are. You say I'm a fast learner. I can pick things up quickly. I'd be more than happy to if this is really important, I'd be more than happy to take the extra time to learn it. I think there's a way of presenting your weaknesses or whatever, the areas that you're not as strong in a way that doesn't make you look ashamed or whatever. You can present them confidently without without lying or without
And then you can even present that as I can learn that, but you can also say when I started learning Ruby, I did that in 6 months, and I was able to progress, and you can see that by the work that I've just shown you or whatever. You can show how quickly you can adapt to different environments, and say that you have the confidence and the ability to be able to do that. But don't lie if you know that you can do that, because lying is the worst.
In a technical interview, you want to try to under-promise and over-deliver. So you want to come in a place where you can say, I know this, okay. You just need enough to get the interview. Once you're in the interview, try to be as modest as possible about your abilities and show them, especially if it's like a coding interview or something like that. Your work should speak for itself. The worst is people who think they know C++ really well, but really don't. It happens that the person sitting across the room from them is world's expert in C++. I generally had interviews with people who would tell me how good at Prolog they are. It just happens that I was a TA for Prolog in school and know it really well, and then the conversation goes in a completely wrong direction very quickly. So you want to be very realistic, and the interviewer on the other side knows what their expectations are, and if you're a junior, the expectations are usually very low in terms of your technical ability. What they want to see is that you can go through a problem and think logically, even if you get the completely wrong solution. It's totally fine to completely feel like you failed the interview, but the interviewer might actually think you did really well.
I don't think you need to bring any weaknesses up. Just be honest if you're asked about them.
I would to push back on that. This is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at, but this is how I'm going to get better at it. In a code challenge, you'll see right away, what your weaknesses are. But are you eager to improve upon that skill? That is it, the tenacity to learn, and how are you going to learn? And in a code challenge, it's okay to take your time and think things through. Don't, think you have to answer things very quickly, because that's not how these products are built.
In the coding challenge, though, the best thing you can do is to start writing at some point. Don't overthink it.
So I have a question. How is it possible to prepare for like an interview if you challenge one of the top companies, but you thought the interview would start from you, which actually it started from the skills before they get to you? Because I've had one of the, somehow I was online playing around. I signed into JP, Chase Morgan, and I had put in the information, like the stuff going through college, and I was just making up ideas for like, okay, yeah, I know how to do this. They called me within 4 weeks later, and I had to go through, I think it was like 4-step process to get to the interview. So it's not that they wanted to see me, they wanted to see the skills before they could see me, because they sent me to the Google company. I was kind of scared, don't know why. I think I had to start off with a cognitive testing. I think that's about who you are. So they want to see, I guess you got to get a 96 or above. The 90s for your attitude. So they actually got on paper you had to express yourself who you are. So I'm looking at the questions like, should I be sarcastic or I don't know. in there, and I got nervous. But when I made it to the second part, it wasn't a good start because they call you a month later after the next division. So the next part I had to do tested for programming. There's 2 different types of programming. I knew Java, C, C++. I had no clue. They knew the same, but they didn't tell us how they wanted to do the program. So they sent me to the Google office to go actually do the programming. I see with the computers communicate until I get to C++. I see there was a 1. Something wasn't right. So it's like I never tried C++. So when they called me, they was like, oh, they let me know. They was
So
like,
how may we help you? Ask a question.
the question is like, with like interviews to prepare, like when you're nervous, how you know which way to go before, I mean, unless somebody call you, you know you gotta go in face to face for an interview.
I think you're prepared by going through that experience. You know, I think it'll help lead to the next thing. And for me personally, I'm very big on meditation, even before things like this. I do yoga, speaking engagement days. It helps my posture and things like that. So whatever you're into, whether it's running or what, you know, like for me, those physical and mental things help calm me down for a situation like that.
I would say, like a couple things. Like one, like be yourself. Like it's important for the company to know who they're getting, and it's important for you to be yourself so that when you actually do get the job, you don't have to pretend to be someone that you aren't, because you don't want to be in a situation where you have to pretend to be someone you're not. And the other thing I would say, like I've interviewed for like lots of big companies, lots of small companies, and and it's interesting. Like there have been some companies where I've interviewed and I'm like, okay, they turned me down. I said, okay, like they were right that I wasn't a good fit for that. There have been some companies where I've like spoken to the whole team, the whole company, and the founders turned me down. But then like the other people who work at the company were like, the founders don't think they need a product manager right now, but they really do. And they refuse to admit it. And so like companies make mistakes, companies make silly decisions. Like I would say like I've gotten rejected from like so many things. You wouldn't like look at my resume, you see like Google and Facebook and Kickstarter. You wouldn't necessarily know it, but like I've been rejected for like most of the things I've ever applied for. So I apply for lots of things. So like don't take it super personally. Like that stuff happens all the time. And really like if it doesn't work out in one thing, like it's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, like if you're not the right person for that position, like you're probably better off not in that position. You're better off like finding somewhere that is really a good fit for you.
And often when you get rejected, it's not you. You are only maybe 50% of the decision process of whether you're going to be hired or not. It's not like the position is open and waiting for you to fill it. There's other candidates. There are all kinds of issues around money, things that have nothing to do with you, and maybe the people interviewing you didn't feel really well that day. So don't get discouraged. It's not, you're just an important but not 100% of the parts of that interview process. And I'll second that too. I got rejected from a Google interview in 2004. I thought that interview was crazy. I got flown somewhere and was asked all these silly questions, and I was very confused by what I'm doing there, and it was very inappropriate for the job that I was trying to get. It was really bad. And
Did you at least get a free lunch?
I got a free ticket and a free lunch and a free accommodations and everything in answers at least 2 of the 6 questions out of my Google interview.
And I'd say when in doubt, whether it's silly questions or keep it positive, you know, you can't really go wrong with that.
And it goes back to just like the simple fact of every experience you have takes you to where you are today, right? With DB, him just like having that horrible experience with Google has taught him maybe how he wants that interview process in his company to be. So every experience, no matter good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, will always teach you to get to that better place. You know, I firmly believe that everything happens for a reason. And so that's like your best prep, is like having those interviews and constantly going on them, so that when you want your dream job, you'll just get better at them.
So we're running a little short on time. This will be the last question. Make it good. Make it count.
What I wanted to know was that when you're creating a startup or your work, you just, I guess, decide an idea. Who do you consider to be like the most, I guess, the best kind of people to work with? Because working with a startup is going to be a lot of time, energy, and passion. And I guess from personal experience, I learned that working with the most capable people are not always the best fit, especially for an idea that you're just starting out.
I would say do not work with friends. It's something I've seen so many of personal relationships ruined by people working together and really starting in a really good place and ending in a really bad one. So work with strangers that inspire you and that really pleasantly surprise you when you meet them the first time. People maybe you can look up to.
I love working with people that have different strengths than I do and also bring different perspectives to the table.
Ditto. Just people that are smarter than me. You know, I find my weaknesses and find people that can kind of balance that out so that we have a stronger team.
My isn't that sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to pretty much echo what they said. You know, the one thing I would really emphasize is people who inspire you, who challenge you. You know, like working with people who make you a better person and make you better at your job is so important.
Not
Sorry,
to,
that's what was there.
my business partner is the first person I met on the first day of school in grad school, so she's my friend. I hope it works out. Unfortunately, we're better or for worse, we're friends. Yeah, but I always think in an interview, and sometimes I try to stop myself. It's like if I was trapped in an elevator or a box with this person for like a day or a month, would I be able to handle it? 'Cause that's sort of what it's like when you're working at a startup.
If they're an engineer, would they be able to help you get out of it?
Would they know what to do?
That's really good.
Good.
So I've had some unpleasant experience with some founding teams. So just from that sort of thing, you know, what I've really made sure is that there's a mutual trust and respect. And if there's any sort of doubt, even early on, you're probably getting that doubt because you're right, and you don't really want to kind of waste the time to kind of figure out that you're right. Getting into something, there's enough opportunities out there. There's enough people that are capable out there that you can find a team that you're confident of working with. Not the easiest thing to build a team, but it takes time, but you want to make sure you're building the right team. I think that's sort of it for today. I'd like to thank all the panelists. I'd like to thank BMCC, the EDC as well.